Good day and welcome. Very exciting. Welcome to the Thunder Bay-Atikokan Candidates Forum. This forum is hosted by the Anishnawbe Business Professional Association and the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. My name is Riley Burton. I'm the current chair of the board for the Thunder Bay Chamber.
Good day, everybody. It's an honor and privilege to be here today to participate in co-hosting this Candidates Forum with Thunder Bay Chamber. My name is Jason Razovich, President of the Anishnawbe Business Professional Association and also a Gunuguming First Nation community member. I'd like to begin with acknowledging that the City of Thunder Bay has been built on the traditional lands of the Ojibwe people of Fort William First Nation, original signatories of Robinson Superior Treaty 1850, and we recognize the significant contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people to our heritage, social, cultural, economic empowerment in our country.
We'd also like to express our sincere thanks to Sociable Thunder Bay for their help with recording and editing of today's session. We also would like to thank AMEC Technology for technical assistance. We've got lots of wires and cameras today. It's all going to work out great. I'd like to say to the candidates, please ensure your cell phones are on silent, of course, for the duration of the event. The order of the speaking has been determined by draw, and questions will rotate from left to right, and each candidate will have 60 seconds for their answer. The timekeeper will raise a notice card when there are 10 seconds left, and you will be cut off after the 10 seconds are up. I'd like to remind the candidates that, of course, we've all pledged to be respectful of each other. Please don't interrupt each other when speaking, and candidates will not use inappropriate language and will follow the direction of the moderator. We'd like to get started. We'll dive right in. We'll start with 1 minute opening statements by each candidate, and we'll start with you, Rob.
Thank you, Riley, and thank you, Jason. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, of course, for hosting this event. And also just want to take a moment to acknowledge the significant work you did in helping businesses navigate their way through COVID. Just amazing, invaluable. So I'm Rob Barrett. I'm representing the Ontario Liberal Party and a candidate for the Thunder Bay-Atikokan riding. And I feel that it's an absolute privilege to live and work here in Thunder Bay. And this would just be a huge window that would open up for me in which I can give back, I think, in an even bigger way and perhaps a better way. Many of the people that I've spoken to over the last few weeks feel disenchanted, even apathetic. They feel like our voice isn't being heard in Toronto. And we want to change that. They worry about healthcare, they worry about education, they worry about our highways and our climate. Together, let's make the North matter. Thank you, Charlotte.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wache, bonjour. And thank you to the organizers of this event today. For the past 4 years, I've had the honor and privilege of serving the people of Thunder Bay-Atikokan. I'm Judith Monteith Farrell. Today, I sit before you as a candidate for the NDP in Thunder Bay-Atikokan. And I believe that I have the heart and the vision to ensure that everyone can thrive in our community. Together with great community partners and the Indigenous leaders from across this region, I believe that we can finally start tackling the issues that we see on our streets, in our hospitals, in our schools, and in our environment. Together, we can unleash the tremendous opportunities and potential that we have in Northern Ontario. Potential that requires that we put people first and we invest in infrastructure. Thank you, merci, miigwech.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you to Jason and Riley and the Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy to be a part of these discussions. I know we're all here because we care about democracy. We care deeply about this region. And we know that the party that's been in charge the last 4 years has not been focused and doesn't get it, doesn't know what's happening up here. So we want to make these voices heard. All the people that might be voting for the three of us that are here want their voices heard. So, we're all doing important work, and I'm just very happy to be a part of that. We can make a difference. We will. We know that the recent statistics I saw was about 67% of the population wants to vote for something other than the progressive conservatives. So we want to make sure that those people get represented, get heard, and we can make a difference for not just the ones that vote for us, but for everyone in this riding, for everyone in Northwestern Ontario. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you. We'll start with the first question with Judith. In 2019, British Columbia became the first province in Canada to develop legislation around the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People and free, prior, informed consent. Last summer, Canada developed Bill C-15, which also supports legislation to support the UNDRIP and FPIC principles. However, Ontario has yet to define its position and process. If elected, how will your party proactively work to define the meaning and practicable implementation of free, prior, informed consent related to major projects impacting First Nation people?
It's been a great regret, and we have put forward as a party in the past 4 years to try to get this government to, the Conservative government, to actually address that issue. And as a party, we've made that commitment to Indigenous leaders across the province already to say that this is a principle that we believe needs to be ingrained in every aspect of interactions in this province. When we don't do that, it's a failure, and Ontario is a treaty partner in many ways and is actually signatory to some treaties. And so it's so important that they live up to that obligation.
Thank you. The Green Party has made a strong statement saying that they would follow the United Nations, the UNDRIP statement and the C-15 from the federal government. We know that we have to have consultation and partnerships that are mutually beneficial with First Nations communities and all northern remote communities. And the way that you do that is you begin with consultation, not do it as an afterthought, which we have seen from other governments. So that is how we would move forward, is to have those conversations from the beginning when we have an idea about new mining projects, about forestry, about land management, that those start with the northern remote communities and Indigenous communities. And that just makes a lot more sense.
The Liberal Party of Ontario is very committed to Indigenous peoples and going well beyond, I think, C-15 in terms of making reconciliation a huge priority. Unlearning the things that we were taught is so important to us. So we want to make it part of curriculum so that our children don't get misled with the truth about the history that we've had and the atrocities that we've perpetrated as a country towards our Indigenous peoples. And those conversations, those consultations have to have meaning, and they have to be beneficial to all parties involved, and we're committed to that. We want to make a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation a statutory holiday. We'll bring back a minister focused on Indigenous reconciliation, and we will invest $25 million in Indigenous small business.
Great, thank you. On to the next question. We're going to start with you, Eric, with the answer. We'll switch gears a little bit. 40% of the new jobs created in the next decade are expected to be in the skilled trades, but only 26% of young people aged 13 to 24 are considering a career in these areas. How will your party support additional development of the skilled trades in Ontario and reskilling opportunities for new immigrants?
Well, we know, especially in the north, we need people to move here when they come to Canada, new people coming into Canada, in addition to the students that are graduating from high school. We do, as teachers, I know this might not even be pushed by the current government, but we do it just naturally. We tell them, you know, you have options. There's the historical tradition of pushing college and university, but we give equal weight to trades, to tell them to go to trade school. Those are where a lot of the jobs are, and we need to promote that. And we need to fund our post-secondary institutions properly. We have the lowest funding in Canada. Ontario is we're in last place. So that's been neglected for too long, and that has to be raised dramatically to support all kinds of post-secondary institutions and promote folks from all walks of life, Indigenous youth, and people coming into the country who are new, and get them to move up to the northwestern area of the province and get them working and get our economy going.
For me, I've been working at this particular issue for a number of years now, and I think we're kind of dealing with history where shop classes were kind of at the back of the school, and the thought was if you don't do well academically, that's where you go. And I think what we've discovered over the years is the people who get involved in trades are very bright, very hardworking, very successful. And so we've really tried to push that agenda forward to attract especially young people back into the trades, and especially females. So important. It's a great kind of career, very well paid and very sustainable. And we all benefit from that kind of thing. I think as far as our infrastructure goes, we've really lacked in that particular area for quite some time now. And one of the things the Liberal Party is really trying to look at is opening up our immigration doors provincially so that we can bring in more skilled individuals to fill these voids. Thank you.
This is an area I'm really excited about, and I've been talking to educators who have programming already where they integrate industry into their classroom and have cooperative relationships. I've also spoken in the mining sector and the forestry sector where they have some very good ideas about having people do a more cooperative experiences, but in a more sort of a regimented way, something that's more integrated into our education systems. And we need to build on what is already started in a lot of Indigenous training programs that are geared to some very successful, geared to providing opportunities for people in remote communities to actually access those training. And the closer to home, the best. Because we don't want to have to remove everyone from their community to get that training. So working with industry and working with our education system, I think we can tackle this problem.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Eric, and this one focuses on, oh, is it Rob? Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. Rob, we see that there is over-representation of Indigenous people in the justice system. Many Indigenous people are coming to Thunder Bay and other remote or rural communities to access education and healthcare, but are experiencing social injustices and also systemic racism. Part of the issue with the mental health and well-being system is that many Indigenous people are placed in the justice system rather than having health services and support to transition them into communities. What will you do to ensure that Indigenous peoples are provided with culturally appropriate experiences and also services when they're looking to pursue educational pursuits and opportunities in cities and urban areas?
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, it's a huge concern. There's an overrepresentation, not just in the justice system, but also in child welfare, where I've had a good deal of experience. So one of the things that we want to do as a party is begin to create awareness around that and education around that. We're prepared to prevent, intervene, and treat opiate addiction and overdose with a $300 million investment. We want to reduce mental health care wait times. We're going to train 3,000 new mental health and addictions professionals. And we really want to have many of these professionals be able to deliver these services in a culturally appropriate way. And hopefully many of whom would be delivered by Indigenous workers themselves. Indigenous workers themselves. We're going to hire 1,000 new mental health professionals, especially for children, to eliminate wait times. We're going to have mental health professionals in emergency rooms and ready to respond in a timely way, and build 15,000 more supportive homes for mental health and addictions. So we're very ambitious in terms of, once again, trying to right those injustices.
Thank you for that question, because it is something that I think everyone in the community should know about, and has been going on far too long. The overrepresentation, because we are not addressing the social determinants of health. Mental health supports, and similar to the Liberal Party, although in our platform we have a commitment to a crisis unit here in Thunder Bay, eliminating the wait times for youth mental health. But it is also very important that we work together with Indigenous leaders to get solutions that are appropriate for in community and in Thunder Bay or small urban centers. If we don't have those resources, and that actually the recognition that this is something that community works with together and family works on together, we will not be moving forward in a good way. So we need to address it.
Thank you for the question, Jason. That's a very important one, and not one that I've had to experience personally, but one that we hear on the news. And if you have any friends who are in these communities that are being attacked, really, I mean, we know, and I'm familiar with students coming into the city. That's sometimes their first experience from coming from a remote community, and then leaving their family and living in a home that they don't know the people, and they're going to a school, and they've heard things about Thunder Bay, for example, being dangerous for them. And that's going to be a very scary experience as a 13, 14-year-old coming to town. We don't want to have that kind of first experience coming into the big city. We know people will have to coming into places like Thunder Bay to have services. Maybe it's just to go shopping, or maybe it's for surgery, or maybe it's for mental health supports, or whatever the reason is. They shouldn't be afraid to, oh, that's a much shorter time zone than I thought. Time expired. Okay.
Thank you. All right, our next question. I'd like to talk about biomass, right? Something important to our region. Biomass heat and power generation is a key element in the economy of Ontario. Diverting waste fiber from our landfills, helping to reduce greenhouse gases, creating investment and employment in communities and First Nations, and assisting in the sustainability of the forest industry in our province. In March of 2022, the PC government introduced a forest biomass action plan that recognized the importance of biomass, but did not commit to a number of specific actions that have been recommended by local industry. If elected, what will you and your party do to support the development of biomass generation opportunities for our region? Judith.
As a critic for the Ministry of Natural Resources, Forestry and Mines, I had many discussions about biomass, and we saw that one of the first actions was the closure of our biomass plant here in Thunder Bay. And I've heard from Indigenous communities and from Atikokan, obviously, that they want that commitment for a contract to ensure. So it's fine to talk about a commitment to biomass, but without the things that need to be in place. So our party has a commitment to a forest strategy that includes help with roads, help with industry support when needed, and a strong commitment to the forest industry, and as part with Indigenous partners that that are wanting their land developed in this way. And so yes, we need that commitment to biomass.
Of course, the previously Liberal Party were integral to creating that biomass generating station in both Thunder Bay and Atikokan. The Thunder Bay one, of course, was closed down under our current government. We are very committed to biomass and any kind of clean energy technology. We want to expand the Greenbelt from 10% to 30% of the land in our gorgeous province. We want to create 5 new provincial parks. We want to plant 800 million trees over the next 8 years. We want to cut carbon emissions by 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. We want to divert and recycle 60% of waste from landfills by 2030 and 85% by 2050. We want to become a net zero government by 2030. With local governments and Indigenous communities who want to prepare for extreme weather, and we want to provide up to $9,500 in rebates on electrical vehicles and charging equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this issue actually hits home very closely because we know in Atikokan we have our power generation station that was converted from coal into a biomass plant. One of my former roommates was one of the engineers there, and he told me all about how it works and the issues they were working through. And, you know, we know that that's a big employer here in our area. We know that we need more power for mines that are going to be opening because that's part of our plan to be able to harvest more of the minerals that we need for electric vehicles and for other, say, solar panels and the batteries that might be in homes as well. So we need to be able to have more power, and biomass is a good source of that power. There are some folks that have issues with biomass. There are ways to increase the efficiency, but right now we're using waste products from the mills so we can turn that into pellets, and we do that right here in Atikokan. So this is something we want to support and keep going.
Thank you. Okay, next question, we'll start with Rob. Critical minerals is a hot topic related to achieving our net zero transition in Canada, and many of these critical minerals are found within First Nations traditional lands. When we talk about the Crown's obligations for duty to consult, there are still issues today related to that process. In last summer, Ganugaming First Nation was successful in pursuing a court injunction over a mineral exploration permit that was granted through the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. What will you do to ensure that there is adequate consultation and consent from First Nations peoples before permits are granted?
Well, I think one of the difference between our approach and the Conservative government's approach is that we will consult and we'll have open and meaningful conversations and not push our agenda. It's about respecting Indigenous communities and Indigenous people who have been, thankfully, the guardians of so many things in our province, but most especially the environment. And so it's ensuring we can have all the checklists and cover off all of the things on our particular agenda, but most importantly, we need to have that affirmation from the Indigenous communities that we would be working with. That's the ultimate, and see them as full partners and wise partners. They've been around a lot longer than we have. Thank you.
The critical mineral strategy is exciting and people are excited about it, but it isn't an environmental plan. And that is what the present government, or the Conservative government, sees it as. There is very little respect for the process, and the environmental assessments that are undertaken sometimes are done in haste or without proper consultation. And consultation's an easy word, but we need pre and prior informed consent. And how do you make that happen? You make sure that communities have all the resources they need in order to make those decisions together. It's not fair if you have a community of like 800 people and then you have a multinational corporation on the other side. We need to even that playing field to ensure that that is in fact done in a respectful way.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I think what you said at the end is key to the whole thing. Before permits are granted, that's when we do consultation. When the idea and the research and we're going to look in this certain area for minerals, we're going to do testing. Well, before you even do the drilling and the testing, we should be consulting, and this should be a cooperative project, you know, with whichever communities call that traditional territory their home. It shouldn't be an after the fact thought. It should be something that we start with. So, you know, previous governments have gone about this backwards, finding minerals, wanting to start digging, giving approval, and then trying to find consent is completely the opposite way we should be going. We should be starting with consultation and planning, and it should be an ongoing process as well, not something you just do once and then, okay, we got permission, we're good. It's something you keep doing on an ongoing basis, and the benefits should be felt by all of the communities involved.
Start with you, back to you, Judith, on this one. Simple interview question. What do you see as the top priority for our community, and how will your party's platform impact that issue?
It's difficult to narrow to one, I could tell you that. I would think that healthcare is our number one, because without healthy people, and I mean mental health, dental health, pharmacare, and equitable access to healthcare for people in Northern Ontario. Without healthy people, we can't move forward. And our seniors need to be taken care of as well in a respectful way. So our party's platform has many aspects that address that. We are the party of healthcare, and we have always made it a priority. So putting mental health services under OHIP, ensuring everyone has pharmacare and dental care, and ensuring proper funding for our hospitals and our healthcare workers.
And I would agree with Judith that if we had to land on one, healthcare is a pretty big one to land on, because it also includes mental health, which is a huge issue for us, particularly as a central hub for the north here in Thunder Bay. Our particular party's committed to $1 billion in additional investment in terms of building capacity over the next few years, increase the number of family doctors and nurse practitioners, create 15 community health centers, and create over 3,000 new hospital beds. We also, as far as elder care goes, we want to end for-profit long-term care for seniors. We saw what a catastrophe that particular model has been, and we want to change that. Until we change that, which we will do by 2028, we will conduct regular audits, inspections, and zero-tolerance sanctions. And we'll help seniors stay at home by helping them with home repairs and assistive devices, and we want to ensure that any senior who requires care receives it.
Okay, thank you.
You know, it sounds simple, but it's hard to narrow it down to one. I feel like what motivated me to run was there were so many things that I feel like need more attention. Just attention to the North in general. And when we have a majority government that doesn't have representatives up here, or just doesn't have a philosophy that looks at all communities, it might be just it seemed like previous government was more focused on the 905 region. And I have heard that from a lot of people that I've talked to. And so just a general focus on our area to consider that we need people moving up here. We need people to be working. We need to consult with Indigenous groups, all of them. And we also need to look very closely at how incarceration is happening, because, you know, we have, and I might get the numbers slightly wrong, but I did hear that it was about 50% of the inmate population in the North, for the female inmate population, was Indigenous women, and they only represent 5% of the population elsewhere. So that's a big problem we need to fix, and that's a systemic problem.
Start this round with Rob for the next question around clean energy. With decarbonization of industries planned across Canada over the next decade, renewable energy projects are providing more clean and reliable energy sources to the grid. There has also been advocacy for small modular nuclear reactors and hydrogen. What will you do to support Indigenous-led approaches to energy and electricity generation?
Absolutely embrace them. I think we're at a unique time in our world where we have such technology. We have people who are really thirsty for clean energy, and we're at a point in time where I've heard a 3-year window in terms of our climate. If we don't turn things around, we might not ever be able to turn it around. We certainly saw during COVID, when streets were barren and we were mostly staying at home to try to stay safe, how the climate rebounded. And so we're very open to clean technology. We want to erase as much dirty energy as there is out there. And certainly if Indigenous people have ideas around that, we're all ears and would fully embrace that.
We know presently in Indigenous communities, many of them are relying on diesel fuel to generate electricity, and that's the only option. And because there hasn't been a commitment to alternate kinds of sources, we know that we have great untapped resources in our hydro generation in Northern Ontario, things we're not using. But in order to use that, we need infrastructure. And those are the kinds of things that we need to start investing in. We talk a lot about developing the North, our mines, but without the infrastructure in place and without the human resources in place, that's never going to happen. And Indigenous communities are living that reality every day. And so they need to be part of the solutions to see innovation, which is available in many countries that are doing some very interesting things.
Well, we have seen recently there's been one major project, the new transmission line that was built in conjunction with Indigenous communities, and that shouldn't be the exception to the rule. That should be normal. So that should just be a part of the way things are done in Northwestern Ontario. There's a great opportunity right now for Ontario to be ahead, to be a leader, not just in Canada, but in the world, to be ahead of the clean energy transition, to be capitalizing on the new climate economy. This is something that the Greens are really pushing for. If we get students trained in this area, which we will pay for their first year of training to go into green energy and clean energy transition training, we can be ready and take advantage of and have a great, powerful, strong economy that's, you know, not trying to play catch up as we have been, or making last minute promises for an election campaign. Thank you.
Good job, Eric.
Great, thank you. Back to you, Judith. Let's talk a little bit about talent and a reflection on immigration as well. Thunder Bay's workforce is facing a high rate of retirement due to an aging population. So without an adequate influx of immigrants, coupled with the integration of our current domestic population into the labor market, businesses will simply continue to struggle to find workers. So if elected, what steps will you and your party take to expand regional programs to improve access to in-demand workers?
This is so important because I think recently I just heard a statistic that we've only grown our population by 1,000 in the Thunder Bay area. And so I thought, well, that's not sufficient for the number of people that are going to be retiring. And we hear continually from business that they are struggling to get workers. We have a plan with our party to assist workers that come from other countries to get they bring qualifications, yet they're not able to get that certification. So accelerating those programs to accelerate those qualifications. The other thing again is that without infrastructure, without proper schools and hospitals, we're not going to attract people here to Northern Ontario, because they're not going to come here with a child with special needs if they can't get autism services. So that is part of the big picture in attracting workers here, and until we get our head around that, our government needs to get their head around that, and we do in Northern Ontario.
As I mentioned earlier, the Ontario Liberal Party wants to be in charge of our own immigration within the province and really look at bringing more skilled workers, certainly into areas such as Thunder Bay and some of our more remote communities. We need to backfill these skilled areas because we just don't have the young population to do it. In addition, we're going to invest in improving online options for higher education and training, including virtual and augmented reality tools. We want to bring more and better learning tools to the rural and remote communities. As an area, Northwestern Ontario is aging, and we also, I think, need to do our best to try to retain our youth as well as attract young families and young people to come here and stay. We have many people attending our colleges and universities, and many of them leave again, and I think we could do a better job of incentivizing them to stay in this beautiful part of the country. Thank you.
Okay, Eric, we've seen many First Nation leaders talk about honoring the treaties and the need for Ontario to do so, and renewing the relationship with Indigenous people across the province. Ontario is existing because of the 40+ treaties that were signed in the province. However, there's still issues related to decision making and fair and proper sharing of lands and resources related to specific treaty areas. As long as the sun shines, grass grows, and river flows are some of the language that's found in some of these treaty agreements between the Crown and First Nations leaders. What will you do to ensure that the Ontario government honors the treaty commitments that were made when treaties were signed and move forward in a fair and positive way?
Thank you for the question. I think this is a big, important step towards actual reconciliation, is making it clear that, and this is part of the Greens policy, and one that I believe in personally, and it just makes sense that the treaties say we are sharing this land, and the reserve land in a lot of the treaties was specifically for those communities of their own, but the rest of the land was to be shared and share in its, in the bounty of it. So I think one of the things we can look at is, with Treaty 3, we have also the PAPOM Treaty, which is the document that was created alongside by translators. We know that Treaty 3 was actually rushed back to the Crown in England and signed before it was finished being agreed to. So we need to go back, look at those treaties, start with a conversation and work together with First Nations, all of the communities up here. It's a constant and ongoing consultation that should be happening. Thank you.
And I agree with Eric. I think definitely a priority of the Ontario Liberal Party. And one of the things that we've talked about throughout a lot of the pillars of our particular platform is cutting through the red tape. And this has been going on for far too long. Even when I door knock, I've talked to a number of Indigenous people who feel like their patience and gentle kind of demeanor is being taken advantage of. And it's not right, and it's not just. And so I'm certainly very committed, and I believe the party is too, to speeding up this process and certainly making it as respectful as we can, and acknowledging the fact that it hasn't been that respectful up until now. Thank you.
This is such an important issue in Canada, in this place and time right now. And it seems that we have an opportunity because finally there is some recognition that things weren't fair, that they weren't right, and that institutions are finally recognizing that. And in Queen's Park and in our Ontario government, is there really a space for Indigenous leaders to be partners in decision-making around the lands in Ontario? And I would say no. And I would say that you know, our system of government is a colonial system of government and needs to have reform to make spaces in decision-making places so that we can have all voices in this province meet and make those decisions that will make it better for everyone.
Thank you. We've got time for one more question. I'd like to bring up the basic income pilot. We had the opportunity locally to pilot the program. It's something that the Chamber has advocated for. The economic and public health crisis of the past 2 years have left many households with record levels of debt and financial instability. Will your party reinstate the basic income pilot program to assess the costs and benefits as a way to address income inequality? We're going to start with Rob.
Absolutely, that's part of our platform. We do want to reinstate the basic income pilot, because we know from having talked to the people who participated in that their quality of life was elevated immensely. We also know that they were much more involved in our economy. They bought more and spent more, and as a result, we all benefited from that kind of program. And I personally believe that the weakest part of any of our communities should be addressed, and everybody should be entitled to safe housing and be safe, and safe food, fresh food, and clothing, and a stable quality of life. And I feel like the basic income is a good way to begin to address that. Thank you.
It's also in our platform that we will resurrect the basic income pilot, because having spoken to many of the participants, we knew that they were hopeful at the time that this was a way of sort of unleashing, having an income guarantee, sort of release them from a lot of the obligations of being under social programs, that they were independent. But the other thing is we really need to recognize that our ODSP and OW rates are so abysmal that people are forced to live in horrible situations or live on charity, and they aren't even able to lift themselves into an area where they can even think about working. And when we talk about, you know, getting one of the joys of the basic income, where people said, I was able to get enough together so that I could find work, and then they did get work or finish their schooling or have enough to eat. And so I really hope that we move forward with that, but I think $15,000 a year is probably not enough.
Thank you. I think all of the people in the legislature, except for the Progressive Conservatives, would agree that it was a mistake to cancel the basic income pilot. And it was actually a promise. 4 years ago, there was a promise from Doug Ford to keep that going, and then immediately that was revoked. And it wasn't based on any studies or science, because the studies came out and it said it was working. People were going back to school, people were starting businesses, people were thriving. It was working very well. So I mean, this is a third vote of yes for bringing that back. And I think we can do away with the word pilot. We know that this has been studied in other jurisdictions and at other times, and we know that this most recent experiment or pilot worked. And so we can bring back a basic income, and the Greens say we want to double ODSP and OW rates right away, because those are some of the most vulnerable people, and we know that they need the help right away. So I think hopefully we are all the ones putting that into place this fall. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move to closing statements at this point. So thank you, everyone. But we'll go back. I know it's hard to summarize all our discussion into one last presentation, but I'm going to give it to you to close off. And we'll start with you, Eric. You got a minute for closing statements.
Okay, I know I did miss some of the discussion, but we know that we're here in part to support businesses and discuss how we can do that and keep our economy thriving. You know, we all support workers, of course, but you know, small businesses and self-employed people are workers too. You know, and I've heard some of those people say, you know, we have the most bosses of anyone because all of their customers are their boss. So they work very hard. They put out a lot of risk, and then they possibly employ other people and provide services that we need up here in Northwestern Ontario. And so it's great to have these discussions and find out, you know, how are we going to move forward and support small businesses, self-employed people, medium-sized businesses, and how do we get and support more Indigenous folks into that realm? There's an explosion of that happening, and we want to be able to support that as much as we can, and we do that with consultation and discussions like these. So thank you for putting this on.
Thank you, Eric. To you, Judith.
Thank you to my running mates and to the organizers. I really enjoyed this discussion today. I'd like to address small business and that too, because we didn't really get a chance to really touch on that. And that we know that on average, many of the businesses lost $150,000 during the pandemic. And we would like to see the programming in place to support them and the people that fell through the cracks to actually get some money, and also the people that did get money and still need to be supported, because they do provide jobs, they provide opportunities, and they provide services in Northern Ontario. And that piece, I really want to celebrate the tremendous entrepreneurial spirit in Northwestern Ontario and the great work that many people in the small business area do. And I really, again, want to thank the organizers for this opportunity.
In closing, I too would like to thank my fellow candidates as well as the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity to, I think, share this exciting platform. Thank you also for pushing Indigenous matters into the conversation. I think that's so important, and I want to continue to do that, and I believe our party will as well. The Liberal Party's used the last 4 years to kind of take inventory and reconnect with the people that we hope to serve in this government. And in that, we have discovered that health care, mental health and addictions, elder care, education, certainly small business, these are all super important. And we know in the north, transportation is huge. We need safe highways. We need to be kinder to our climate and continue to grow clean energy, whatever that looks like. And if I have the privilege of representing you at Queen's Park, I will help make the north matter once again. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, that concludes the Thunder Bay-Atikokan Candidates Forum, hosted by the Anishnawbe Business Professional Association and the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. Our sincere thanks to the candidates for your thoughtful responses to our questions. Certainly not easy being on the hot seat, but you all did quite well. Thanks also to Sociable Thunder Bay for their help with the recording and editing of today's session, and to Amic Technology Incorporated for their technical assistance. Thank you to the listeners and onlookers for tuning in. We hope that today's session helps you to make an informed decision around this year's provincial election.